Fantastic. Thank you.
Can do.
Perfect. Thank you.
We're going to call the meeting to order at 7:15. We'll start with the flag salute. Just follow up. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Ms. Bollenbacher?
Here.
Mr. Chandler? Here. Ms. Compitello?
Here.
Mr. Marks?
Here.
Mr. Oliverio?
Here.
Mr. Rodillo?
Here.
Mayor Perry?
Here.
Solicitor Formal?
Here.
Engineer Minsterman?
Here.
And myself, we've got a quorum.
Thank you. All right, first item is the consent agenda. The minutes from December 9th and January 3rd meetings, in addition to the bill list, we put on OneDrive for all council to review. We have a motion to approve the January 13th, 2022 consent agenda. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Public comments. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue appearing on today's agenda. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments on non-agenda items will be taken at the end of tonight's meeting. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be required to designate a spokesperson to represent them before council, who may speak a maximum of 5 minutes. Please state your name and physical address for the record. We have anybody signed in?
Nobody was signed in.
And anybody online, please raise your hand.
Looks like there's one person dialed in, but I don't see any hands.
All right. First item is the president's report. One of the things I would like to mention, and it's actually in the agenda number 13, which is the DCNR grant. And this is for the bathhouse. We were just informed on December 30th that the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation awarded Crafton $250,000 for the Crafton Park and Pool bathhouse restoration. So Crafton Council and the Parks and Recreation Board is excited to move forward with these improvements. And many thanks to Representative Dan Deasy, Senator Wayne Fontana for their help in seeking this grant. We also received a letter from actually Governor Tom Wolf's office, where he said, "I'm writing to congratulate you on the grant award in the amount of $250,000 from the Community Conservation Partnerships Program, and is administered by the Department of Conservation and National Resources." So he said, "Your grant award is in recognition of outstanding recreation and conservation work that should be shared with your community." DCNR staff will be in touch with us to further go through the details of the grant. I believe, according to the engineer's report, the project will start work at the end of the pool season for this year. So it would be after the pool season. Another item is, without objection, I would like to move our meetings from, typically the first meeting of the month was a meeting where we discussed items and then we voted on them on the second Thursday. I'd like to make the change to have the meetings be a meeting and discussion both, so that we can move through items a lot quicker if necessary, especially from deadlines and expiration dates relative to grants or other projects that we're working on, so that we would have the ability to not only discuss meetings, but also to vote on them at the same time. We can also delay them to another meeting if necessary or if more information is needed. So, do we need a motion or anything? Okay. Or if anybody has any questions or comments.
They've been advertised. No.
Great. The last item I'd like to do is recognize our Public Works Department for their work this past snowstorm that happened. Somewhat a little bit of a surprise. The roads were cleared the public's opinion was really positive towards that, and we potentially have another one coming up on Monday. So I just want to recognize them for all of their hard work in the middle of the night when the snowstorm started and over the weekend. That's all I have from the president's report, the mayor's report. Ms. Barrett?
Well, Mr. President, you've stolen some of my thunder because under the heading of public safety, I was going to also
You may have-
give credit to our public works department because I did too get a number of very positive comments about how well they dealt with the first snowstorm. And then, you know, being first week, there's not much to report. I had a couple of meetings with the chief about everything seems to be in good. I'm looking forward to moving on to get some other projects going. And I'll report on them as we do.
Thank you. Next, we have the engineer's report, Mr. Woods.
Yes, nothing really new outside of what is in the engineer's report. You mentioned the grant. That's very good news. Construction season will be kicking off here in a few months before you know it. But for now, everything outlined in the report summarizes the engineering issues. Nothing further.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah,
Because there is one other thing, and I wanted to thank Gateway, because I know that they worked with the contractors in securing the fencing around the construction.
Okay.
Thank you guys for doing that, and thank Independent for improving that
Okay.
situation.
Thank you.
Mr. Runciman, could you give a quick update on Crafton Boulevard and Woodlawn Fountain? Two of the major projects, just a quick update.
Yeah, they're just moving ahead. They're doing sidewalks, ADA ramps and curbs, just finishing the restoration. You said the other project was
Woodlawn
Fountain. Yes, Crafton Boulevard is where they're actually proceeding, just installing curbs and sidewalks. So it's restoration now. Roadway and paving will come in the spring. So most of the work right now is concrete, where you can do it in colder weather. The other project is actually wrapping up. So finally, the paving and once again will be in the spring. But the project has gone well. They moved pretty quickly, and so now it's a matter of just getting that paved. Yeah, nothing exciting. Just things are going well and they're moving ahead.
Thank you. Solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to congratulate everybody. I wasn't here for the reorg meeting. One of my partners came to cover for me since I had 4 meetings that night. I can't clone myself yet to be in all this business. So welcome to all the new members of council. Looking forward to working with all of you. You also note that typically in my reports, at least in the public session, I usually say I report, but that doesn't mean I'm not doing anything. It usually means that we will be talking about issues in session, or you'll be getting email communications from me as things work for the manager, things that I'm working on or handling. So just wanted to make sure everybody understood that and doesn't know that I'm just not sitting at my office twiddling thumbs all the time. So again, I'm always open and available if anybody has any questions or concerns. I know a lot of folks are learning things and learning things that you're newly elected officials for. So I'm always happy to chat about those things, because you'll hear, even in the classes, you'll hear different opinions. Happy to work through or talk through those because we have time to launch. That's the end of my report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Sure.
Manager's report.
I did upload a report to the OneDrive, but I did want to make one note. Hollywood Music with our AV upgrades is slated to start January 18th, which is a Tuesday. So
Next week.
yes, light at the end of the tunnel. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to give me a call or ask me now. But the 18th, we will be getting underway with that.
Great news. Thank you. All right. We do have 5 committees made up of council members, residents, and commission chairs. And I'd like to go through and every meeting have an update or report from each of them. There may be nothing to report if you haven't had a meeting, but something to, what you would like council to know about as you're working through these various meetings. And the first one is finance and administration. Ms. Perry?
Yes, so we have already had 2 meetings. We've been concentrating on administrative facets of the committee. Before the new council was seated, there was an RFP put out for professional services to do an administrative review of the borough. And that committee has met twice. The first time to discuss the 5 proposals that we got and to narrow down to their 2 top runners. And then we had a presentation by those 2. We have asked for some additional information, and I expect that the committee will have a recommendation for council by the next meeting. Then we will be, I believe we have scheduled our regular finance and admin meeting for 4:30 p.m. for the first Thursdays of the month. And at the next one, we will be reviewing the 2021 actuals against budget, and we'll be working on getting that annotated so that it can be published. Anything I missed then?
Thumbs up, good job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Okay, community services and infrastructure, Ms. Costello.
Yeah, we had a long meeting this week about the infrastructure updates. I don't know if I need to give any of those. Or if that's all covered in the engineers.
It's covered in the engineering.
A couple of other things that weren't in that though, or that I wanted to make sure we highlight. There is a Crafton Parks master site development plan that's going on right now. It started back in September. We have a consultant called EPD that's been working through the process. It's about a 6-month process. And there are no decisions that need to be made right now from Crafton Council, but we do need to be prepared to see that come across our desk in March. The goal is to be approving that plan in March so that it can be in place in time for an April grant cycle to start pursuing funding for some of the projects that will be in that plan. Hopefully everyone is at least familiar with the fact that we've been doing this parks plan, master site development plan. It covers all of the parks in Crafton, as well as several sites that Crafton owns or partly owns, and is looking to explore opportunities to expand park and recreational amenities in those spaces. There was a survey that was put out in end of late November, came out before Thanksgiving and was open through mid-December. There was a public open house that was held in mid-December, and there's currently another survey, a second survey that is a follow-up to that open house that will be open through next week. And that allows residents to review some of the initial concepts that were put together, give their feedback before the report is too finalized. It's a draft that the steering committee that we'll be looking at. There's a steering committee that is comprised of members of council, members of various communities, as well as residents who put in their applications. There was an open application period last fall for that. That draft will be prepared and then it'll be in front of council in March. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that Crafton has been awarded a grant for a new zoning project to revise and update our zoning. That hasn't happened in a while, and it is very valuable to update our zoning periodically. It was one of the recommendations that came out of our comprehensive plan that was done in 2017. This project has been a few years in the works. An RFP was put together in 2019, and that was made public, and we solicited proposals, about 4 proposals from different firms in 2019. That went through to interviews in late 2019, early 2020. At that point, I can't speak to everything that happened at that time, but there were some changes in borough leadership. There were a lot of other projects on the table. It got delayed a little bit. COVID happened, it got delayed a bit longer. So here we are in 2022.
And additionally, that grant was not awarded in that 2019 cycle.
Initially, we were not going after that grant. The initial RFP was just to do the zoning on its own, but because there was a delay, there was also, we realized the opportunity to actually do a joint zoning effort along with Ingram. So if anyone is not familiar with our comprehensive plan that was done in 2017, it was also done as a joint planning effort with Ingram. We have a joint comprehensive plan. So the idea was that by doing a joint zoning update, what that means is each borough would have their own zoning document, but we would have a joint overlay. And by going in on it as a joint project with one consultant, we were well positioned to go after a grant with DCED. So we went after that grant. And I maybe, if I want to quote the date, we went after it after COVID started, maybe late 2020. We did not get it the first cycle through, but we were just awarded it in December. We found out that we were awarded the grant. So it'll be a 50% match. And the project between Crafton and Ingram is estimated at being about $100,000. That estimate was as of 2019, reissued in 2020, but that's a 2020 estimate. It would be $100,000. So that would be split 50,000 for Crafton, 50,000 for Ingram, and the grant that we were just awarded will cover 50% of that. So that would leave us on the hook for about $25,000. We have 30,000 in the budget for this. There's a lot to go over with the history of that project. But the highlights are we have it in the budget. We now have a grant to pay for 50% of it. We do have an agreement, which we are tied to as part of this grant. We have to do this with Ingram. They've been good partners. We have a joint planning commission with Ingram as well. They have already committed to do this with us, and our grant is for a 50% match, assuming that we do this with Ingram. We, however, do not have a contract. So this is something that council is going to have to act on. We have an RFP that was done in 2019. We had 4 applicants. All 4 proposals have been put on the council drive. So you can read through them. The RFP is posted on council drive, and all 4 proposals are posted on the council drive. Since 2019 though, none of those proposals were binding, obviously, for that long. So we did reach out to some of the preferred firms in 2020 and asked them for extensions. Only one firm has offered extensions through 2021. And that extension, I believe, is also now expired. And so we're going to reach out to them again. And I talked to Doug about that this week. That firm that was the one out of those 4 that has agreed to offer extensions through 2021 was EPD, the same firm that's doing our master park site development plan. But we don't know yet if they're willing, if they are still going to honor that. We don't know if they're still willing to, if they're still interested, and we don't know what their price will be at this point.
After all this time, would it not be worthwhile to just solicit new bids?
And that's another thing that we can consider. If we do put out a new RFP, we wouldn't have to substantially change it from the one that was already written, but we could put out a new RFP and we could reinitiate the process and go through a new set of interviews. It would be really worthwhile for all of you to look through the initial RFP. We were looking for not just a zoning update, but a zoning update with a partial form-based code approach. I'm happy to explain that more if you want to discuss it today. There's also resources that have been put together by the Planning Commission. We've talked about this over several sessions over the past few years. The 4 firms that put those applications through in 2019 each had different approaches to how they were going to do a hybrid form-based code. Some of them were more form-based code, some of them were less form-based code. So they each had their own approach towards how they were going to do it. I think at this point, I mean, we can take questions and I'm still learning the process here, but because we haven't heard from any of those firms, we certainly haven't heard from the ones that have from EPD. We don't know if they're going to continue to offer an additional extension. There's not a lot that we can deliberate on it yet at this point, but we should be prepared to discuss this, to make a decision. I do strongly recommend, and the Planning Commission also made a motion to recommend to the new council that you all please look at the RFP and the 4 proposals that were put in 2019. Because this has waited a long time and because we have Ingram who has agreed to be a partner on this, we should be looking at making some decisions on this spring.
So the request you have, council, is to review the RFP and the 4 RFPs that were submitted on the OneDrive.
Review the RFP, review the 4 proposals that were submitted. We will come back with more information about the availability of the 1 firm. And if there are questions or discussion, we can do that now, or if there are questions later about what the zoning value is or what the form-based code approach is, I'm happy to discuss that individually or at our next meeting.
Does anybody have any questions? Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Great. Communication, recreation, community events, Mr. Marks.
Hey, all, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so the last time this committee met was back in November. We're just going to be getting started with our first meeting of the year next week. And I still need to reach out to the rec board to start talking to them about upcoming events. So look for an update next council meeting. Doug already talked about the council chambers, right? So on the 18th, Hollywood is supposed to start the work getting the new AV system installed. That's both for the chambers and the community center, right? And should equip everybody who's dialing in and using Zoom to join to have quite a bit better of an experience. So look forward to those next meeting. Hopefully everything goes smoothly. And yeah, I mean, as far as our, and, so we're going to be talking about the newsletter, some things around the pool and other upcoming events during our meeting next week. So we also had the social media policy, which is later on the agenda, come out of that November meeting. So I'd say, yeah, I commend everybody who, who sits on that and helped us kind of get that together. So that's all I got.
Thank you. All right, commission vacancy, Mr. Chandler.
As this is a relatively new committee, we haven't had any meetings or anything yet, but we are working to get those scheduled and see how that's going to look. So hopefully I'll have more to report by the next meeting.
Thank you. And Council of Governments, Cobb, Mr. Riddell.
Thank you. At this time, I have nothing to report. Our next meeting is on January 20th. So I look forward to that and reporting after that meeting.
Great, thank you. Okay, the business agenda that Mr. Marks had mentioned is the social media policy. And this was done by the Communications, Recreation, Community Events Committee last year. It was probably mid-year where the project was started and completed. The social media policy was reviewed by the solicitor. The borough manager was involved. And it was actually put together by Mr. Marks, who leads the committee currently. So it has been reviewed, it is on the OneDrive, and the goal here is to approve the social media policy. So do we have a motion to adopt the social media policy dated January 7th, 2022?
So moved.
Mr. Mark? Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Riddell, all in favor? Or, I'm sorry, any discussion? Okay.
Can we discuss
Sure.
just what this means for individual use of social media?
Justin, do you want to address the question?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the whole thing.
Can we discuss what this means for individual use of social media?
Sure. So, I mean, the policy covers, it was written to cover borough employees, borough volunteers, and it serves as a kind of just a guide for elected officials, just to talk through what best practices are, and just make sure that there's a pretty clear distinction between, particularly for elected officials, that, there's a distinction between, you stating opinions and statements on the internet and just clearly expressing that they're your own. This is really not any, it's not very much different than any social media policies that most employers are, putting in place today for their employees. And just, as elected officials, we have a responsibility to, act on behalf of our, of the folks that we represent. And, but we also don't want to, accidentally give the impression that that we are speaking officially for the borough, right? So this kind of covers use cases like that. And again, we had a lot of back and forth, a lot of feedback in the committee. There were a lot of wording changes and pieces that were pulled out. And again, we did get the final stamp of approval from the solicitor. So I think we have a pretty solid policy here.
So can I ask guidelines about like clearly identifying that you're not speaking on behalf of that borough? Does that primarily apply in cases where you're posting from an account that identifies you as being affiliated with the borough, or is that intended to be something that has to be affixed to every statement made?
Oh, no, I don't. Yeah, again, this is just guidelines. There's no hard and fast requirements here. I know typically a lot of professionals, executives, people who serve on various boards, people who have to, watch what they say because of SEC, regulations and all kinds of other things. They will basically just preface their profile or something with like, hey, I'm an elected official, but everything that happens on this account is my own, right? That way, it doesn't accidentally get misconstrued by the press or a taxpayer or any of these folks, that the borough has a very particular stance, because obviously we have processes in place. We have a council to vote on things, and a solicitor and a manager and folks that that are actually working for the borough and would help make official statements like that, right? And we just want to make sure that there's a clear distinction between those things. Again, there's no hard and fast rules here, and it's not like there are like big let's see what I'm trying to say here. There's not repercussions or anything necessarily. It just outlines expectations for what the borough is hoping, precautions that their employees and the public officials that serve the borough would take, and what kind of actions, like an official statement from a solicitor or something, if something gets accidentally misconstrued as official borough statements that may not actually be that.
I'll just weigh in real quick here and just say, I don't think it's a matter of which account, it's basically like what you were commenting on or speaking about. So if you're talking about your friend's child and how cute they are, you don't have to say, this is my opinion, and not the opinion of the Borough Council. But if you're on the, Crafton community page and somebody's complaining about issue X, if you're opining or offering, you should indicate that you are, or the page that you're using should be indicating that you're speaking on your own behalf and not on behalf of Borough Council or the borough or whatnot. And again, as Justin said, these are for the elected officials, these are guidelines. There's really not a whole lot that can be done to make you comply. We're just hoping that you follow. What I believe, when I received it, I was extremely impressed with the detail and thoroughness of the policy. I did have some minor comments, but not many. It was very good policy. And I think it's a good starting point for you all to try to work through, implement it. And if you see problems as you move forward, like any other policy, we can continue to update it to address concerns as they should arise. That's all.
And I think just kind of as a last point here too, right? Implementing policies like this are, again, they're pretty standard practice in every other sector, every other business company, right? They have social media policies or ways that they kind of expect you to represent the company or yourself, right? I think what we really gain here by implementing the policy as is protections from a borough employees and borough volunteers perspective, right? It does protect us there. And then if there are any modifications or other issues with it, we could always bring it back and amend the policy and vote on it again. So.
Any more discussion or questions? We have a motion to adopt the social media policy dated January 7th, 2022.
We actually have a first and second, so.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Roll right to the vote.
Sorry about that. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, thank you.
Motion passes 6-0.
Allegheny County Vacant Property Recovery Program. So this program allows individuals to acquire vacant and blighted properties. And we have 2 properties listed here, which the property was demolished for $34,618 in 2021. And there's a process of a lien on this property. So this would allow the parcels to be free and clear of all the tax liens. And I believe this is a side property. Mr. Sanders, you want to speak to that?
Yes, so if we were to approve this resolution for this program, we would not see our $34,000. The county would wipe that clear. There could be there is a process to petition the courts, but it's a very cumbersome process, and it does not guarantee that we'll get our $34,000 that we have, that the borough used for an emergency demolition of the property. I indicated this to the county. The county said that they would need official action from the Borough Council. It would be my recommendation that we deny this resolution till the lien is actually placed, and there's other options out there that maybe this parcel could be redeveloped or used for another purpose. I think it's just too early in the game right now to utilize this program.
Mr. Corbin, do you have anything?
No, I agree with Mr. Sample analysis, and my office is in the process of filing the lien. It has not yet been filed. So my view is, at a minimum, you're tabling this, or at a maximum, you should deny this at this point.
All right. We have a motion to adopt the resolution 2022-001 authorizing the acquisition and subsequent disposition of parcels 40K-86 and 40K-87 would be in accord with the comprehensive plan of Crafton Borough.
And And Steve, you might have to make, if it fails to even garner a vote, is that a negative or?
I would prefer if we voted, somebody made the motion a second and there was an affirmative no vote rather than just a motion without a second and it failed. Because then we can communicate that to the applicants and to the county. Even though Doug's right, if someone makes a motion at a meeting and there's no second, it dies. It's as if it were denied. But in this case, I would encourage you to consider moving forward with the motion and the second, so there can be affirmative negative vote if that's the way.
By making the motion does not mean that you have
You
to vote.
Or that you
Or
support
that
the
you
motion.
support it, or if you seconded that.
In that case, so moved.
All right, Mr. Chandler moved, Mr. Riddell second, and now for discussion.
So the motion is to authorize this application?
It's to approve it, yes. So you would vote no to stop. Correct. To deny the application.
And I have a question. So, I mean, I know there's nobody in the chambers, right? Nobody signed in to come and talk. I guess I would have hoped.
We do have the reporter here, and then there's 2 residents that did walk in.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I also see 2 folks on the Zoom call, or three people on the Zoom call. And I guess I would have hoped to hear from the applicant, you know, and if they're not, I guess they're not here. So I think it would have been interested to at least get their take beyond the application here.
I would not be prepared to authorize this at this time. Does that mean voting no?
Correct. It can be brought up again, etc. But we're not going to place.
I've seen them where they come back and request it again.
Yep.
It's too early to approve this resolution. So yeah, it would be my recommendation.
I understand that. So in inspecting the applications, the applicant is a trust from out of state. The property that is the next to it, so this is the side yard, is a rental property. And on the application, the box is checked because of the nature of the program. It says side yard of primary residence, and it is not their primary residence. Steve, would you have anything to say about that?
I'm not so sure that under the program that a commercial use would be, which is what this would be, if it's a rental property. So we can look at that if they come back and maybe stop this before it gets too far down the line. But I do think that there are restrictions in the program as to commercial type uses or commercial entities purchasing the property or taking the properties through this vacant program.
Any more discussion or questions?
So we still have to make the motion, right?
No, the motion's been made and it's on the table. We're discussing the questions. Any more? All right, all in favor? All opposed? Aye.
No, let's say no.
No.
Motion fails 0-6. Okay.
Okay. Community announcements. The first one is council opening. So at the last meeting, our mayor has resigned from our council seat and accepted the mayor position. So we do have an opening on council, and the process is outlined that applicants must fill out the application with their resume and submit it to the borough office or by email to manager@craftonborough.com no later than 4:00 p.m. this Monday, January 17th. The applications are on the Crafton Borough website. All applicants must be available to attend the Borough Council meeting on Thursday, January 27th at 6:30 p.m. Candidates will have a maximum of 5 minutes to make a brief statement regarding their qualification to members of Borough Council and the mayor. There will be a brief Q&A following each candidate's presentation. The The applicant selected will serve as a member of Borough Council until December 31st of 2023. All applicants must be a borough resident for at least 1 year prior to the date of appointment, which would occur as early as January 27th. The DCNR grant, which we mentioned in the president's report, I did want to also acknowledge prior council for their work on this grant. There was a lot of effort by prior council and our engineers on this grant, and I had forgot to mention. Our next council meeting is Thursday, January 27th at 6:30 p.m. to allow for the presentations by applicants for council. So that is a change from our start time of 7:15 to 6:30. All right. Does anybody else have anything to add? All right, public comment. At this time, citizens may address the Crafton Borough Council on any issue. Only residents and taxpayers of the Borough of Crafton will be permitted to address the council. Comments on agenda items will be taken. Speakers will be permitted to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Groups of people will be quiet for 5 minutes. And state your name and physical address for the back. Do we have anybody signed in?
They could just come up to them
Okay.
if anybody is.
And anybody online, please raise your hand.
I'll just repeat in case anyone didn't hear. If anyone on the Zoom call dialed in would like to speak, please raise your hand through Zoom. Give you 30 or 60 seconds here. No, looks like we're good, John.
Anybody else have any other items? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Dustin, seconds, Mr. Chairman. All in favor?
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
First meeting.